Hi, my name is Christopher Getz. I'm a full-time professional photographer, and I've just recently started doing wet plate collodion, or I've been doing it for about a year. I first got introduced to wet plate collodion while doing my certificate 4 in photo imaging by John Nolan, the head teacher, and ever since then I've just been madly in love with the process. Just hands-on making one-off images that you can scan them, you can copy them, but they're never the same. And that's probably why I love wet plate collodion the most, because it's a one-off image.
My name is Pania Newport. I was introduced to wet plate collodion photography by Chris actually, just under a year ago. What's drawn me to the process is the hands-on nature of the photography. You're making one-off images, you're making your own chemicals, everything is done by hand from scratch, right down to the varnishing of the plate. And to be able to make something from nothing and pour your own chemicals, I think just that process alone is really appealing. The concept behind our exhibition title is called Object, Wet Plate Collodion Portraiture. Our concept is based on the meditation of the picture taking process with wet plate collodion as a form of photography. The exposure times we're looking at can be up to 1 minute. And the people that we have coming to sit for us bring with them an object of importance. It maybe invokes a memory, or it has a feeling, it may be a family heirloom. So we're really interested in not only the process of wet plate collodion photography, but we're also interested in people's stories and their stories with their objects. And the whole process of having them sit and having their photograph taken on tin, it's almost like meditation in itself. It's a real ritual. We sit down, we get to know our sitters, we get to hear their stories about their objects, and so the wet plate is the final finished product of that meeting, of that process, of that ritual.
What is wet plate collodion? So wet plate collodion basically is, well, I'll start from the beginning. We make our collodion, we put bromide and iodide into collodion, which is nitrocellulose, gun cotton. Then we pour that onto a plate, then we put that into a silver bath, and then the iodides and the bromides react with the silver, become silver halides, and then we put it in, this is all in the dark, so we put it into the dark hole, the dark slide, and we put it in the back of the camera and we expose it, and the ISO is around 0.8 to 3, so we're looking at exposures from anywhere between 3 seconds to 30 seconds, even sometimes a couple of minutes. And then we go back into the darkroom, we make our own developer, we pour developer onto the plate, and then we put it into the fixer, which is sodium thiosulfate.
The beauty of the darkroom is that moment when you're pouring a developer on your plate, you don't know what's going to happen, and within the time of maybe 5 to 15 seconds you start to see your image appearing. And it's similar to black and white film. When you're developing film in the darkroom, you have that beautiful moment where you can see it starting to raise. You can see the silver starting to wash off.
You can't hold a pose for 10 seconds and it be sharp or anything like that. So I think when you take photos doing wet plate, it's more of you're really taking a photo of someone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a photo, it's really a photo of who they are.
What they look like.
Yeah.
And it's grainless as well. So the plate, when it's finished, when it's finalised, you can have a look at the detail in that plate, and it's grainless. If you get a really good sitter that's able to sit still for a while.
Or even a still life, if you do a still life and it's just sharp, it's just quite beautiful.
Something of importance for our exhibition as well is the still life. The still life photo is an image of their object, and again it comes back to that feeling of everything that we photographed is an object. So we have a person that attends with their object, they're photographed onto tin, which is a one-off object, and then we photograph their object separately in its own still life. And so that all we've really done is just created these extra objects, yet the person who's sitting in that photograph with their special object. They are the one that has the most feeling, the most memory about the process of taking that photo, but also the relationship they have to their object. And so that's why we've given the object just as much importance as the person themselves. So the amount of time that's invested and the amount of money that's invested is huge. And so when you're trying to develop a technique with wet plate portraiture, with pouring, with how you put your plate into the bath, there's so much that's involved with the hands-on, with the trade, with the craft of actually making these images. There's so much invested, not only in money and time, but the things that you give up to be able to perfect that
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it is when you do stuff up, you know instantly how to fix that. So it's not like with your digital camera, you take 1,000 shots and you're like, oh, overexposed, underexposed, that was shaky, too long. With this, you take one shot and you stuff it up, and you're like, well, there's a couple of $100. Let's fix that. Let's fix this up. Yeah.
Some of the epic fails. Oh my gosh, epic fails. I've exposed plates and failed to put the slider back into the dark slide and just pulled it out of the back of the camera and just totally blown plates. I did that 3 times in one day. So I blew $550 in a day. That was so depressing.
Or leaving the lens, the shutter open and taking the back out, and you're like, wait a minute, did I close the lens? No, I didn't.
And just dropping a plate.
Yeah, dropping a plate.
Or
setting one on fire, because we varnish and we heat up the plate, and we use alcohol and lavender and gum sand rag. So yeah, lighting that up, that was kind of interesting.
I think that most fails happen when we're rushing.
Yeah. It teaches you to slow down so much.
It does. When I rush, I make mistakes. I get streaks on my plates. I get nicks. I get dust. I forget to put the slider back in. So you really have to be in this state of calm. No music in the studio. Just nice, quiet conversation with your sitter. Just really relaxing and concentrating on what you're doing. And that's actually when it's most enjoyable. One of the inspirations for wet plate collodion photography for both of us actually has been Ian Ruther, and watching his.
You know what? I actually can remember when I first watched that, and that's what almost really got me. Yeah, it actually did get me into it. Man, I want to do that. And plus, my mate's going, you'd never be able to do that.
But his story was the same. Tired of seeing the same sorts of imagery. Tired of digital photography. Wanting to create something that's hands-on, and we're the same. And so yeah, big shout out to him because he's sort of inspired both of us.
Champion, meaning go back. No, you're a good bloke, mate. You've done that.
I think the next step for us after this head-on exhibition will be to continue to refine and perfect our craft of wet plate and pouring and developing, and there's so much to be learned there, and looking at great wet plate collodion photographers such as Quinn Jacobson, who's also been quite inspirational for us. His portraits are really clean and beautiful.
It's like you read about wet plate and you'll never read enough. Like there's so many different recipes, there's so many different ways to do it. It's not just like, okay, there's one recipe and there's one way to shoot it and there's one ISO and there's thousands of different things you can do. And just like if it's a hot day, like that's your exposure can change dramatically, sort of thing.
Plates can dry out. And like just these little tiny things can just totally ruin your world. But the best feeling with wet plate.
Oh, shoot that plate
is when you get that.
And you're like, fucking yeah, look at that. Just like to thank John Nolan from Sydney Institute for inspiring me to get into wet plate.
And Sydney Institute
of Photography. Head-on Photo Festival, Moshe.
And of course all of our sitters spending time with us, taking time out of their day, letting us listen to their stories about their objects, giving us a chance to meet them.
I'd like to thank Pania because she's put up with so much of my crap.
It's been a fun ride.
It's been